Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something that I think affects all of us, and that is sugar.
Oh, yes. Sugar.
And specifically, how sugar affects the brain.
Right.
You sent me over some really great articles from Harvard Medical School, and
Yes.
I'm excited to pick your brain about this.
Yeah.
So I think we all know sugar affects our bodies in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But what about our brains? What happens there?
Well, the brain actually runs on sugar, or more specifically, glucose. It's the primary fuel source, for all those billions of neurons that allow us to think and feel and experience the world.
Really?
Yeah. So,
It's kind of like the gas in the tank.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
essential for all those processes that go on in the brain. One of the quotes from the article says, the brain is dependent on sugar as its main fuel. It cannot be without it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if our brains are like a car, glucose is like the premium fuel.
Exactly. It's essential for creating neurotransmitters. These are the chemical messengers that allow the brain cells to talk to each other.
Okay.
And when your brain is low on glucose, that communication falters, and you can experience problems with attention, thinking, and overall brain power.
Oh, so that's why sometimes I feel like I have brain fog when I haven't eaten in a while.
Exactly. That's your brain sending out an SOS for more fuel.
Interesting.
Yeah, even for those without diabetes, dips in these glucose levels can impact cognitive function.
Got it. Okay, so we know that glucose is important for brain function,
Mm-hmm.
but the articles you shared also mentioned some potential downsides of having too much sugar,
Right.
and that seems a little bit counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does, and this is where the story gets really interesting. While glucose is essential, excessive amounts can actually be harmful to the brain.
Really?
Yeah.
So how much is too much?
Yeah.
How do we know?
Well, that's what researchers are trying to figure out. But we do have some clues from animal studies. There were a couple highlighted in the articles, one from 2009 and another from 2012. Both found some alarming connections between excess sugar and brain health.
Okay, so let's break those down a little bit. The 2012 study, I believe, was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. What did they find?
Well, they found that fructose, which is a type of sugar often found in processed foods and sugary drinks,
Right.
was linked to accelerated cellular aging.
Oh, wow.
So essentially, too much fructose could be making our brains age faster.
And if I remember correctly, the 2009 study, that one was done by researchers at the University of Montreal and Boston College.
Yes.
And they were looking at high glucose intake. And what did they find?
They found that it led to problems with both memory and overall cognitive function. They published those findings in the journal Neurobiology of Aging.
Okay.
Now, it's important to note that both of these studies were conducted on animals, but they do suggest that even without a diagnosis of diabetes, a diet high in sugar could have serious long-term consequences for our brains.
Okay, so even if our brains need glucose to function, too much of a good thing can be bad.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance, and this balance becomes even more critical when we consider the impact of diabetes on the brain, which was another major focus of the articles that you provided.
Right, diabetes.
Yeah.
It seems like that's where this conversation gets really serious.
Yes.
Could you give us a quick breakdown of the different types of diabetes and how they relate to brain health?
Sure. So there are two main types, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 diabetes, the body's immune system attacks the cells in the pancreas that produce insulin.
Okay.
And insulin is a hormone that regulates blood sugar levels. So without insulin, glucose can't enter cells for energy, and it builds up in the bloodstream.
Okay, and so type 2 diabetes is a little different.
Yes, type 2 diabetes is far more common.
Right.
And in type 2 diabetes, the body still produces insulin, but the cells become resistant to it, which also leads to elevated glucose levels in the blood.
Got it.
And both types of diabetes, if not well managed, can have a significant impact on the brain in the long term.
So chronically high blood sugar from either type of diabetes can actually damage the brain.
Yes.
In what ways?
Well, one way is by disrupting the brain's functional connectivity. This refers to how efficiently different regions of the brain communicate with each other.
So like a miscommunication.
Kind of. Imagine trying to have a phone conversation with a lot of static and dropped calls.
Oh.
That's similar to what happens in the brain when functional connectivity is impaired. And it's not just communication that's affected.
Okay.
Prolonged exposure to high blood sugar can actually lead to brain atrophy.
Brain atrophy. What is that?
It means the brain shrinks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that can't be good.
No, it's not good. This shrinkage can impair cognitive function, memory, and overall brain health.
So it's like the high blood sugar is actually speeding up the aging process in the brain.
Yes, that's a good way to think about it. And there's another issue that we need to consider too.
What's that?
Small vessel disease.
Small vessel disease? I don't know if I've heard of that one.
It occurs when the tiny blood vessels in the brain become damaged,
Right.
often due to chronically high blood sugar.
Okay.
Think of it like a network of roads with potholes and blockages.
Right.
The traffic flow is disrupted and some areas might not get the supplies they need.
Got it.
In the brain, this restricted blood flow can further impair cognitive function and even increase the risk of vascular dementia.
So between, the communication issues, the brain shrinkage, and the damaged blood vessels, it seems like uncontrolled diabetes can really take a toll on the brain.
It does.
But, amidst all this kind of scary stuff, there was also some promising research mentioned in these articles about a potential treatment. Have you heard of intranasal insulin?
Yes, intranasal insulin, or INI,
INI.
is a very fascinating area of research. It's a way of delivering insulin directly to the brain via a nasal spray.
Through the nose.
Yes.
Wow.
This bypasses the bloodstream and allows the insulin to target specific areas of the brain involved in memory and cognitive function, like the hippocampus.
So instead of injecting insulin to regulate blood sugar throughout the body, this method delivers it directly to the brain.
That's right.
How does that work?
Well, you see, insulin receptors exist not only in the body but also in the brain.
Oh.
By delivering insulin directly through the nose, researchers can target those receptors in key brain regions.
That's really fascinating. What kind of results have they seen with this INI?
Well, Dr. Suzanne Kraft, who was quoted in one of the Harvard articles,
Okay.
has conducted studies using INI with both healthy individuals and those with Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, wow.
And these studies have shown that INI can improve memory function in both groups.
That's incredible. So are there any other researchers looking into this?
Oh, yes. There's a lot of exciting work being done. Dr. Richard Novak at North Shore University Health System conducted a pilot study on older adults with type 2 diabetes. His findings were published in the journal Diabetes Care, and they showed that even a single dose of INI had a positive impact on various cognitive functions, including memory, verbal learning, and spatial orientation.
So it helped them think more clearly.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really promising. It sounds like this could be a game changer for people with diabetes.
It could be, especially considering the high prevalence of dementia and cognitive decline in that population.
Exactly. So what's next for this research?
Well, Dr. Novak and his team, along with other researchers around the world, are now conducting larger clinical trials
Wow.
to further investigate the potential benefits of INI for people with cognitive decline and those at risk.
That's great. Well, this has been such an insightful deep dive into the intricate relationship between sugar and the brain.
It has.
We've learned that glucose is essential for brain function. But excessive amounts can have detrimental effects, especially in the context of diabetes.
Right.
We've also explored some promising research on intranasal insulin, which offers hope for those struggling with cognitive decline.
It's a very complex topic.
It is a very complex topic.
Yeah.
And I think it really highlights the importance of a balanced approach when it comes to sugar consumption.
Absolutely. Our brains need glucose to function optimally, but too much of it can have detrimental effects, particularly in the context of diabetes.
It seems like the key takeaway here is moderation. We need to fuel our brains without overloading them with sugar.
Precisely. And this raises an important question for our listeners.
Knowing what we've talked about today about this delicate balance between sugar and the brain, what steps can we take
Right.
to make sure we're fueling our brains effectively, but not going overboard?
Well, that's a great question. And it really gets to the heart of, how we can apply this knowledge to our everyday lives. It starts with awareness. Just being mindful of how much sugar you're consuming is a crucial first step.
Okay, so reading labels,
Yeah.
paying attention to, how many grams of sugar are in the things that we're buying at the grocery store.
Exactly. And don't forget about hidden sugars.
Oh, right.
They can really lurk in unexpected places like sauces, condiments, even seemingly healthy options like yogurt or granola bars.
Oh, that's a good point. It's easy to overlook those sneaky sugars.
It is.
So beyond awareness, are there any practical strategies we can use to kind of help manage our sugar intake?
Absolutely. One effective approach is to focus on incorporating more whole, unprocessed foods into your diet.
Dope.
Fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and whole grains. They all provide sustained energy without the dramatic blood sugar spikes and crashes that come with processed foods and sugary drinks.
So instead of reaching for that candy bar when I need a quick pick-me-up,
Yeah.
I'm better off grabbing an apple.
Exactly.
Okay.
Those whole food options will provide a much more stable and sustained release of energy, which is better for your body and your brain.
And what about, those times when I do want to enjoy, a sweet treat?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to do that?
Sure.
And kind of mitigate the negative effects?
One strategy is to pair sugary treats with foods that contain fiber, protein, or healthy fats.
Okay.
For example, if you're having a piece of cake, enjoy it with a handful of berries or a dollop of Greek yogurt.
Oh, okay.
Those additions can help slow down the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream, which prevents those drastic spikes and crashes.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily about completely eliminating sugar, but it's just more about being mindful and,
Yeah.
making smart choices and managing our intake.
Exactly. Moderation is key. Your brain needs glucose,
Yep.
but it doesn't need a constant bombardment of it.
Well, this has been such a fascinating deep dive. I've learned so much about sugar and the brain today. We've learned that glucose is essential for brain function, but excessive amounts can have detrimental effects, especially in the context of diabetes. But there's also hope on the horizon with research on intranasal insulin, which, really could be game-changing for those struggling with cognitive decline.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
It has been a pleasure, and to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this journey of discovery. Remember, knowledge is power when it comes to your health, and even small changes can make a big difference in the long run. Click like and subscribe to this Unlock Your Mind podcast.